Good day, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the urinary system. Your urinary system is for elimination of waste products like nitrogenous waste, toxins, and drugs.
Hello, friends. Today we'll learn about the urinary system. Oh, you have an assignment on urinary system? Let me make it easier for you. Come with me. The body receives nutrients from food and changes them to energy. Once the body has taken the required food components, waste products are left behind in the bowel and in the blood. The urinary systems, or the renal system, help the body to get rid of liquid waste known as urea. So the urinary system's function is to filter blood and create urine as a waste byproduct. Here's the diagram. It consists of the kidneys, ureters, bladder, sphincter, and the urethra. These are the renal veins, and these are the renal arteries. Let's see the parts and functions. Two kidneys. The kidneys are two bean-shaped organs which consist of calyces, renal artery, renal vein, medulla, and cortex. They help the body pass waste as urine. They also help in blood filtration before sending it back to the heart. They release hormones to regulate blood pressure and also control the production of red blood cells. Can you show me where your kidneys are located? Yeah, very good. Two ureters. These thin, narrow tubes carry urine from the kidneys toward the bladder. Muscles in the ureter walls constantly relax and tighten, forcing urine downward away from the kidneys. About every 15 seconds, small amounts of urine are evacuated into the bladder from the ureters. Each ureter is about 12 inches long. Bladder. The bladder is a muscle sac in the pelvis, just above and behind the pubic bone. When empty, the bladder is almost the size and shape of a pear. The bladder stores urine released from ureters, allowing urination to be controlled and infrequent. It can hold around 400 milliliters to almost 500 milliliters of urine. Two sphincter muscles. These circle-shaped muscles help keep urine from leaking by closing securely, like a rubber band, all over the opening of the bladder. Urethra. The urethra tube allows urine to pass outside the body. The brain signals the bladder muscles to tighten, which squeezes urine out of the bladder. At the same time, the brain signals the sphincter muscles to relax to let urine exit the bladder through the urethra tube. This is how urination occurs. Friends, let me share some tips to keep your urinary system healthy. Drink enough fluids, especially water. Exercise regularly and keep a healthy weight. Eat plenty of high-fiber foods. Use the washroom often and when needed. Take enough time to fully empty the bladder while urinating. Now you know a lot about the urinary system. Stay tuned for more videos. Bye-bye.
Okay, so the functions of your urinary system would be to regulate still the aspects of homeostasis. So basically, yan lang naman ang trabaho ng lahat ng mga system, no? To, um, para their goal is to achieve homeostasis. So, for the urinary system, that would be water balance, electrolytes, acid-base balance in the blood, blood pressure, red blood cell production, activation of vitamin D. So, ayan, as you saw kanina, the organs of your urinary system would be your kidneys, your ureters, your urinary bladder, and urethra. So, the location of your kidneys is against the dorsal body wall at the level of T12 to L3. And your right kidney is slightly lower than the left. So, it is attached to the ureters, renal blood vessels, and nerves at renal hilus. Atop each kidney is an adrenal gland. So, the covering of the kidney would be there is a renal capsule that surrounds each kidney and an adipose capsule that surrounds the kidney. Provides protection to the kidney and helps keep the kidney in its correct location. So the regions of your kidney is first your renal cortex, which is your outer region, renal medulla, which is inside the cortex, renal pelvis, which is your inner collecting tube. Yan, renal pelvis, your medulla, and your renal cortex. Your medullary pyramids are triangular regions of tissue inside the medulla. Yan. To, di ba? Para siyang pyramid. And your renal columns extension of cortex-like material inward. So, your renal columns. Yan. So, na ba ito? Ito, di ba? They are extensions of cortex-like material inwards. And the calyces are your cup-shaped structures that funnel urine towards your renal pelvis. So, this one. So, again, you have your renal capsule that surrounds each kidney. Itong covering niya. Then, meron niyang adipose capsule din dyan. Then, inside, you have your renal medulla, which is the inside the cortex, renal medulla na part, no? And your renal pelvis, which is the inner collecting tube. So you have your pyramids here and your renal columns. Then your calyces na papunta doon sa pelvis. So, the blood flow in the kidney. So, ito yung blood flow na from the aorta, it goes to the renal artery, and segmental artery, then lobar artery, then interlobar artery, arcuate artery, interlobular artery, afferent arteriole, then dun sa glomerulus, efferent arteriole, peritubular capillaries, interlobular vein, arcuate vein, interlobar vein, renal vein, and inferior vena cava. So your nephrons, these are the structural and functional units of the kidney. These are responsible for forming urine. The main structures of the nephrons are your glomerulus and your renal tubule. So ito na, ang glomerulus is a specialized capillary bed. It's attached to arterioles on both sides, so it maintains high pressure. So, we have your large afferent arteriole, and a narrow efferent arteriole. So these capillaries are covered with what we call podocytes, no? Yan, podocytes from the renal tubule, and the glomerulus sits within a glomerular capsule, no? That's the first part of your renal tubule. So the renal tubule, no, glomerular or Bowman's capsule. So there are parts. That's your proximal, your PCT, or your proximal convoluted tubule, no? Then your loop of Henle, then your distal convoluted tubule. So, what are your types of nephrons? First is your cortical nephrons. No, they are located entirely in your cortex, and it includes most nephrons. While your juxtamedullary nephrons, they are found at the boundary of the cortex and the medulla. Yan. To. So, peritubular capillaries, they arise from efferent arteriole of the glomerulus. It is a normal low pressure capillary, and it's attached to a venule, and it links close to the renal tubule. It reabsorbs reclaimed substances from collecting tubules. Urine formation process. So, in the urine formation processes, we have your filtrations, which is water and the solutes smaller than proteins are forced through the capillary walls and pores of the glomerular capsule into the renal tubule. Then, nagkakaroon ng reabsorption wherein the water, glucose, amino acids, and needed ions are transported out of the filtrate into tubule cells and then enter the capillary blood. Then, nagkakaroon din doon ng secretion in which hydrogen, potassium, creatinine, and drugs are removed from the peritubular blood and secreted by the tubule cells into the filtrate. So, that's looking at it from afar generally, no? Pero if you really study the reformation process, Ano yan, inaaral pa yan kung ano yung nangyayari dito, anong naka-absorb, anong nasisecrete, no? Pero generally, itong na nangyayari. May filtration, may reabsorption, and, may reabsorption ng water, glucose, amino acids, and needed ions, and nagkakaroon ng secretion ng hydrogen, potassium, creatinine, and drugs. No? Saglit lang. Okay. So, filtration, no? So, filtration, it's a non-selective passive process. So, non-selective, lahat, no? Lahat na filtrate. Water and solutes smaller than proteins are forced through the capillary walls. Blood cells cannot pass out to the capillaries, and filtrate is collected in a glomerular capsule and leaves via the renal tubule. So, reabsorption, the peritubular capillaries reabsorb several materials. So, ayan, some water, glucose, amino acids, ions, and some reabsorption is passive. Most is active. Most reabsorption occurs in the PCT. Ayan. So, don't forget, mostly ang reabsorption nangyayari sa proximal convoluted tubule. So, di ba nakikita nyo yung glucose talaga is nare-reabsorb. So, sa urinalysis, syempre, pag may glucose na, positive for glucose ng pasyente. Meaning, no, we are in suspicion na there's something wrong with the kidneys, um, or pag super diabetic na yung patients, no, pag positive na yung glucose doon, meaning sobra-sobra na talaga yung glucose dun sa patient, dun sa pasyente. Kasi, hindi na kaya i-reabsorb ng kidney lahat. Okay? Next is ano ba yung mga materials not reabsorbed? That's your nitrogenous waste. Kaya nga, waste sila, no? Your urea, your uric acid, your creatinine, and excess water. Secretion, no? Secretion, that just means reabsorption in reverse. So, some materials move from the peritubular capillaries into the renal tubules, that are hydrogen and potassium ions and creatinine. Now, that's why we can test for creatinine in the urine. Then, materials left in the renal tubule move toward the ureter. So, ayan, formation of the urine, ayan, may filtration, may reabsorption, and may secretion. Yan. So, diba? Each part ng ito, diba? Dito lang, nagkakaroon ng reabsorption of water. Yan, may secretion ng sodium. So, may reabsorption ng sodium chloride. So, characteristics of urine used for medical diagnosis, no? So, colored somewhat yellow due to the pigment of urochrome. So, kaya siya yellow kasi ang responsible nun is due to the pigment from urochrome, no? And that is from the destruction of hemoglobin in your RBC and solutes. So, urine is actually sterile, it's slightly aromatic, and a normal pH of around 6. Specific gravity of 1.001 to 1.035. So your ureters, these are slender tubes attaching the kidney to the bladder. It's continuous with the renal pelvis and it enters the posterior aspect of your bladder. It runs behind the peritoneum and peristalsis aids gravity in urine transport. So your urine bladder is a smooth collapsible muscular sac and temporarily stores urine. So your urine bladder has 3 openings. That's 2 from your ureters and 1 papunta dun sa the urethra palabas. So, your urinary bladder wall has 3 layers of smooth muscle, your detrusor muscle, and its mucosa is made of transitional epithelium, no? Para mag-expand siya. Then, walls are thick and folded in an empty bladder. Bladder can expand significantly without increasing internal pressure. So, your urethra, ito na yung daluyan palabas. This is a thin-walled tube that carries urine from the bladder to the outside of the body by peristalsis. So the release of urine is controlled by two sphincters, which is first your involuntary sphincter, that's your internal urethral sphincter, while your external urethral sphincter is voluntary. So, nagkakaroon ng merong urethra differences between males and females. No, sa females, it's around 3 to 4 and males 20 cm. That's why females are more prone to UTI. And the location din na yung females, it's along the wall of the vagina, while males are through the prostate and the penis. So, may difference din sa function between females and males. Sa females, no, it only carries urine. While sa males naman, ito rin yung dinadaluyan ng sperm cells. So, micturition or voiding yung pag-ihi. So, both sphincter muscles must open to allow voiding. Yung first, yung involuntary, di ba? Involuntary. The internal urethral sphincter is relaxed after stretching of the bladder. Then, magkakaroon ng sinasabihan ng bladder mo, ng impulse to the spinal cord, papunta sa via the pelvic transit nerves na naihi ka na. So, ikaw, no, syempre, um, hindi naman involuntary, hindi naman automatic na makakaihi ka lang on the spot. Syempre, yun na, yung pag gusto mong umihi, voluntarily mo nang nire-relax yung external urethral sphincter. So, maintaining water balance. The more normal amount of water in the human body for young adult females is 50%, while for the young adult males, that's 60%, baby, 75%, old age, 45%. So, water is very, very, I don't think we can stress it enough how water is necessary for many body functions and level must be maintained. So, this is, kailangan nitong aralan, the distribution of body fluid. You must know these terms. Intracellular fluid, that means inside the cell, and extracellular fluid, that's outside the cells. And that, your extracellular fluid comprises your interstitial fluid and your blood plasma. So, the changes in electrolyte balance causes water to move from one compartment to another. And this alters blood volume and blood pressure and can impair the activities of cells. So, water intake must equal water output. Sources for water intake, that's your, of course, mga kinakain mo and iniinom, and yung water produced from metabolic processes. Sources naman for water output, meron nagtitake part dyan yung evaporation out of the lungs, loss sa yung sweat, loss in perspiration, leaves the body sa tae mo, and of course, your urine production. So, dilute urine is produced if water intake is excessive, di ba? Syempre, medyo lapsa, medyo diluted yung urine mo pag madami kang water intake. Concentrated naman yung urine mo, no? And medyo maliit lang yung ihi mo if large amounts of water are lost in other ways, no? Proper concentrations of various electrolytes must be present. So, regulation naman nun is primarily by hormones, yung regulation ng water and electrolyte reabsorption. So, this is very important, your antidiuretic hormone that prevents excessive water loss in the urine. And yung aldosterone naman, it regulates sodium ion content of extracellular fluid. This is triggered by renin-angiotensin mechanisms. So, your cells in the kidneys and your hypothalamus, they serve as active monitors. Ayan. So, maintaining acid-base balance in blood. Blood pH must remain between 7.35 and 7.45 to maintain homeostasis. Alkalosis, that's pH above 7.45, while acidosis is pH below 7.35. Most ions originate as byproducts of cellular metabolism. So, most acid-base balance is maintained by the kidneys and other acid-base controlling system, blood buffers, and respiration. So, blood buffers, buffers pa lang, these are molecules that react to prevent dramatic changes in hydrogen ion concentration. So, pwede siya mag-bind to hydrogen when pH drops and i-release na yung hydrogen when pH rises. So, balance-balance lang. So, there are three major chemical buffer systems. That's your bicarbonate buffer system, your phosphate buffer system, and your protein buffer system. So, your bicarbonate buffer system, it's a mixture of carbonic acid and sodium bicarbonate. And bicarbonate ions react with strong acid to change them to weak acid. Then a carbonic acid dissociates in the presence of a strong base to form a weak base and water. So, carbon dioxide in the blood is converted to bicarbonate ion and transported in the plasma. Increases in hydrogen ion concentration that would produce more carbonic acid, and the excess hydrogen ion can be blown off with the release of the carbon dioxide from the lungs. Respiratory rate can rise and fall depending on changing blood pH. So, renal mechanisms of acid-base balance excrete bicarbonate ions if needed and conserve or generate new bicarbonate ions if needed. Urine pH varies from 4.5 to 8.0. So, development aspects of the urinary system. Functional kidneys are developed by the third month, and the urinary system of newborn are very small and urine cannot be concentrated. So, control of the voluntary urethral sphincter does not start until age 18 months, and urinary infections are the only common problems uh, before old age. So, there is progressive decline in urinary function, and the bladder shrinks with aging. So, urinary retention also is common in males. Sorry. So, that's your urinary system. Thank you very much.